Welcome back. Let's go to our correspondent, Lanre Lasisi. He's in a state. They also have about 90% PVC collection rate. Lanre, what are people talking about? What's happening where you are at the moment?
Well, Chamberlain, Yola is calm. People are going about their normal businesses. It doesn't look like there's a public holiday on from the amount of traffic I'm seeing on the street. It appears people are going around getting things done and maybe just preparing for the elections tomorrow. We don't have any report now of any story that shouldn't be up. We've tried to get to the resident electoral commissioner in Adamawa State. He's very busy now. He's promised later he may have more information for us. But right now we understand all the materials have moved from Yola, the capital, to the city, to each local government, the local governments in Adamawa State. The last was to Madagali. So that means everybody has their materials. We haven't gotten any report that the materials that should be in one place is somewhere else. So nothing negative to report. And it appears Yola is set for the elections at this time.
All right, then our correspondent, Lanre Lasisi, speaking to us from Yola in Adamawa State. Well, if I could just bring it back here in terms of still taking a look at some of these concerns that have been raised about preparations for the elections, what INEC has put in place. You know, with respect to those who may be coming out to vote for the first time after a very long time, Ms. Garibiwa, let me ask you, yes, you know, there will always be mixed feelings. After the last one, people looked forward to it, and now tomorrow they're expected to come out there and vote. But in terms of the enthusiasm or expectations that people really have, do you think that having not voted for a long time and now they have their PVC, does it appear to you as though they're willing to stand the heat in the kitchen? Because look, you may get to the polling unit, you don't know how long you have to wait, but we know that voting, once you're on that line, and it's I think about 2 p.m. or thereabout, or is it 3, about that time, so you need to, do you think that they have the staying power to say, look, no matter what happens, let me just see this through and make it count this time?
I'm reading them from the point of view of readiness. If you voted last in 1983 and you said, now I want to vote, I think such a person will take in the heat, no matter what. No matter what, oh, the queue is long, oh, the personnel are slow, because it's a form of determination that I no longer want to sit on the sideline, or I'm neutral, or I'm sitting on the fence. I just want to have a voice. I want to have a say. It may not be all of them, but I would say that like 70% will say, no, I've come this far. I can't go back. I just have to see it through. Some may chicken out, no problem, but I think that about 70% will go all the way.
How much do they rely on the conversation or commentary that comes through from several authorities who are manning different things? Because, for instance, if the police says, go out there, nobody, no thuggery, nothing of such will be allowed. And then INEC says it takes you about a minute or two for you to get to the smart card reader and cast your vote. So how much confidence do they put on those, if you juxtapose it, perhaps with them speaking to those who had voted before?
That may depend on a particular word or a particular state. You know, you find that in some words things move faster than the other based on certain personnel or maybe some other things that have just worked for good. And if you listen to stories, but I will always say that there are folks who will not listen to any story. They just want to cast their vote, no matter how long it takes. Because I remember in 2015, I wasn't in Nigeria, but we had an opportunity to watch it. I saw some 80-something-year-old women in Ekiti, you know, and they were sitting down on the grass and saying, no, today we just have to do this. And it struck me. Because if an 80-year-old woman is saying, no, we have to wait and see to the end of this, you know, it means that younger folks can take a cue from those ones. because the future belongs to the younger folks. And those who are coming back after, say, 35 years, they're in the middle age now. And they've seen how Nigeria has gone, and they know that they're going to the winter of their life. And I think they should have a say in some of the things. And so I think they should be able, or rather, they will be able to hold it on to vote.
There's this conversation we were having before the break about women participation in politics and stuff like that. What's your... I saw you responding to some of the conversation as it was going on.
Yes, you know, I'm a student of international law and a student of human rights. And at times there's some assertions that people make that gets me worried. They say blanketly, Nigeria is a patriarchal state. Yes, to a reasonable extent, but that's not all true. There are many communities in Nigeria, they're both matrilineal and patrilineal. And there are some communities in Nigeria, they're more matrilineal. But you find that the sociologists, and I would like to say those armchair sociologists and anthropologists that came in the 50s and the 60s, just do what feminists will call ground theory. Just say the same thing for everybody. So the issue of women not coming into politics, I would say it's a bit post-colonial. Because during colonial period, yes, women were disenfranchised, but they also had a movement that distorted things, you know, that put the white man on their seats. That made, take for example, the Aba Women's War. You know, they'll say riot, and I say, I beg your pardon. It was a coordinated movement. That was not a riot. A riot is spontaneous. It just starts. But what happened in 1929 was a movement, was something that the women, you know, although it started from a local issue, but they were mobilized and they took to this. Also the Lagos market women and all those other protests in court, you know. So you find that, but you see, our men have benefited from the white man's way of life. And so when we got independence, they just went all that, you know. They just didn't think, although I know that a few women, like late Chief Urala, saw, you know, Mrs. Adekoya, you know, but those are, you know, they just a drop, you know. But I think now, Nigeria is very big in mouth. Nigeria as a state is very mouthy. In the African Union, it was Nigeria that championed the use of gender parity in appointments in AU. And so now you find that in the AU Commission, you find a balance of the same Nigeria that did that at the AU couldn't do that at home.
Why?
Why? Because you don't give up your privilege easily. You don't. So what is necessary for women, they must put up a fight.
That's instructive women and youth.
Won't they still also have to depend on the same men for the opportunities?
Well, there's a school of feminism. African feminists believe that you could engage the men, tell them the values, the positive that will come out of it. So let's come together and work for the common good, you know that. Because if you, I'm not a Yoruba, but I always tell people I like Yoruba people. Yoruba will say, that is just one hand cannot, so which means you need both man and woman to do the job. And I think that's
what do you say to the perception of eroded confidence, the perception of eroded confidence on the women of this country? Let me get your views. Why is it that it's so difficult to talk politics with women even on the streets?
It's a number of factors. Women are multitasking by nature. Our politics have over time, we have what I call a paradox of increasing participation and declining representation. So people go out to vote in rounds of election, and then you sit back and ask yourself, in terms of the expected service that you spend the entire day, which, by the way, not a lot of women have, especially those in rural areas that have to split their time between this and that. And it's not yielding the dividends. And she talked about movement building. Again, what we have seen over time, particularly in Nigerian society, not just within the movements that saw us gain momentum in terms of women representation are actually winning. When I was in the student movement, we had a Women in Nigeria, which was an organization of men and women that believed in feminism and women emancipation. But as soon as we had Beijing Conference of 1994 and the Beijing 12 Platform of Action, then this influence that unless it is women, that women organization must be only women too. They came and expelled all of us men. And that's equal partnership you need to drive. But now, 22 years later, we are talking about male involvement, which I'm happy that my sister here talked about. It was what we were doing in the 80s in the Nigerian student movement. So you need the two hands. The same way for me to be here, my wife is supporting me, looking after our kids at home. We also need to see more men so I can sit back home and support her, because that's what you need to step forward in politics.
All right, let's get an update from our correspondent Idris Jibrin from Kano concerning what's going on there.
Of tomorrow's presidential and national assemblies elections in Kano State, despite some security concerns yesterday, authorities in the state are saying that they are good to go. The Independent National Electoral Commission says that the distribution of both sensitive and non-sensitive materials have already completed since yesterday, and that those materials are already at the INEC area office within the 44 local government areas of the state, and that today's evening they will commence the distribution of both the sensitive and non-sensitive materials to other wards, so that tomorrow, first thing in the morning, the election will commence. On the aspect of security, the Kano State Police Command has confirmed that all preparation have been put in place to ensure a successful conduct of the elections. And earlier today, we've seen a massive deployment of police officers from one place to another, from those who are accompanying both sensitive and non-sensitive materials to those who are being posted to various polling units to ensure a peaceful election tomorrow. Meanwhile, later today in the evening, we are going to follow some words to see that if actually those sensitive and non-sensitive materials will be delivered as promised by INEC this evening today. From Kano State, Idris Jibrin reporting for Channels Television News.
Yeah, thank you, Idris. Let's get back to Abuja now. And Samson, I'm just wondering, you know, having released the figures on the PVCs, that's INEC now, the fact that we didn't have that detailed breakdown concerning, for instance, we want to see local governments, the polling units, how many PVCs or the people have in those areas. Do you think this was an act of omission or commission?
Well, I don't think it's an act of omission or commission. I think that it just goes back to whether as a country we consider data as a valuable instrument for planning. This is a country where data is a big issue. We call it national population data. We don't prioritize data, and flowing from that is access to information and sharing information by different agencies. I know that there's a register at the INEC offices across the country for PVC collection, because when you come to collect your PVCs, it will be recorded in the register for PVC collection. And if INEC had the opportunity or to analyze this information and share them, we would have been able to get that data. My challenge is look at how is data managed internally within the commission, from the local government down to the state, as well as Abuja. Between 11th that the PVC collection ended, did INEC have a sufficient time to put this data sets together as well as share this information in details. I think there's sufficient time, but you know that there's so much that's happening at the same time within this period. But INEC would have taken it to another level by providing data on the gender disaggregation as well as the age disaggregation. I think the resident electoral commissioners at the state do have an opportunity to do that. They have been releasing, some have been releasing the disaggregation by local government. But for transparency, it will be important to consider, releasing even the PVC collection by polling unit. And political parties have made that request of the Electoral Commission. I think that will open up the space and open up the process so people can keep watch over the voting process tomorrow. But I think INEC would had an opportunity to provide this data as disaggregated the way it did for the voter register when it published the voter register. We could tell that young people were 51.1%. We could say women were about 46% and males were about 51%. We looked at the zonal distribution as well. All of those analyses are very, very critical for our elections.
Let me ask Ms. Bayo this question. And I want to take it to voter education. By this time tomorrow, we'll be about 20 minutes away from the end of, or the close of the of the people joining the list to the queue to vote. Do you think, going by the quantum of voter education or not that we have had, do you think the voter tomorrow is aware of how powerful their right is?
I think that's one thing that voters know now, how powerful their right is and how important it is for them to exercise their franchise. But I think that we need to go a few more steps higher in voters' education, that it doesn't just end at the ballot, that holding politicians accountable, the real work starts after the ballot. And being able to recall politicians as well has some attachment as well to whether you register as a voter or not. So it's an ongoing exercise, and we mustn't relent. But then I think we've done a good job this time around.
We are diverse as a people. You are very well aware of that, ethnically, religiously, socially, professionally, and that's the reason that question came, not just for those of us who know or who can sit in air-conditioned rooms or cars, but those who do not have the privileges of being in modern Nigeria, who are in the rural areas. Do you think they are? Yeah, my colleagues are always saying I'm talking about the hinterland, but it's very, very important. Do you think they, who do not have the privileges of being in modern Nigeria, do you think they are aware of the same power that you and I are aware of?
But one of the things I'll say that we've done is that we've told people how important their vote is and for people to go out and cast their votes. There have been massive education on radio, on television, in communities, and you'll be surprised how far these communications have gone, and people have gone into communities to actually talk to them about that. One of the things I would say, though, is that our elections and our politics hasn't grown to the point where we are beginning to speak to people in the language they understand. You do understand there's a high level of illiteracy in our country. And for people to understand what the real issues that are at stake are is still a problem. Now, people who are not literate, and then you've got the manifestos and the agenda of politicians in English alone, or in just the 3 major languages, is very, very difficult for a country as diverse as Nigeria. You've got from the pulpits, whether you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, you're an animist, you've got the pastors and the imams and the spiritual leaders saying, go out there and cast your vote because that's what gives you a voice in this country. You've got the Market Women's Association as well saying, you know, if we will have the kind of country we want, the kind of conditions that we want, we may as well choose the people who would lead us there. And so you've got that. And I think it's very elitist for us to suggest that we, the 2%, continue to speak to ourselves and then leave out the 98%. I think we're carrying out along a large part of the 98, But I think in terms of substance, in terms of understanding what really is at stake, in terms of understanding the direction that the parties intend to go, in terms of understanding as well why parties should have their own philosophies and their policies.
All right, by the way,
we still got a lot of work to do, and like I say, it's ongoing. But I don't think
go to break at this time. Yeah, well, we'll come back to this in a moment. Don't go away.